You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1. Section 1. You will hear 2 colleagues, Mike and Jane, discussing the need for new equipment in their office. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Hi, Jane. You mentioned that we might need some new equipment in the office.
Absolutely. What we've got is too old, and much of it is faulty.
Well, you know how difficult it is to replace equipment. I guess I'll just use another requisition form. We can fill it out now.
If you don't mind.
I suppose you're going to complain about the printer again.
Sure, my printer's bad, but the copier is almost unworkable. It jams all the time, it's too slow, and it's already been repaired 4 or 5 times. We've got to do something about it.
OK, I'll put that down on the form. So you want a copier, not a printer. And you work in accounts, right?
Yes, that's right, the accounts department.
OK, but this is a requisition form. There's meant to be a limit on the length of time you can have the item.
We need it forever. The old machine's almost useless. The moment it gets repaired, it breaks again.
Well, I'll just write ongoing, OK? That basically means the item will stay with us until I say otherwise. Now, the next question is, when do you want it? In a few days? 1 week? It usually takes a while for these things to arrive.
If it arrived today, it would be better. We need it as soon as possible. Can you write today?
Well, it can't come that quickly. I'll just write immediately. But be warned, that means it may still take some time to get here, perhaps a day or 2.
That's annoying. We've got so much unexpected demand right now.
Good. I'll write that as one of the reasons. We need 3 reasons, you know, or they won't grant this request. So for the second reason, I'll write original broken.
And that's essentially true. It is broken.
The truth is always good. But can you think of one more reason?
Not really. But those first 2 reasons are surely strong enough, aren't they?
Well, I think we still need a third reason. Maybe I'll have to bend the truth a bit. I'll just write, require more functions. OK?
Or you could write, require faster speed.
No, all these copiers operate at the same speed, so that reason won't sound true.
OK, whatever it takes.
Right. And shall I put your name? Jane Huang, spelt with a U, right?
Well, actually, I would say your name would be more likely to get speedier results.
All right. I certainly don't mind putting my name with this. Mike Green. G-R-E...
Just like the colour green, right? But with that final E, which often tricks people.
Yes, that E at the end tricks them all the time.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
Actually, Jane, talking about office equipment needed, I've got a list before me of all the items purchased last year. There's certainly a lot, and I can see why the owners are getting concerned. Obviously, some things are necessary in the business, like the 20 boxes of copying paper I've just ordered. And it shows here that last year our office ordered 2 fax machines, which is certainly not excessive, but there's a lot of other equipment on this form which may raise questions.
Yeah, but we had special circumstances, Mike. We renovated the office and had to replace all the computers and printers. 17, I think.
We actually got the printers from another department, so it didn't cost us. But sure, with 17 people all needing computers, that was a considerable expense, along with the 15 speakers and 16 headphones. Why did we need those?
Everyone was using Skype to communicate with clients. They still do, of course. It's a very popular way to communicate.
And we have 6 items here as well.
Printers? But you said we got them from another department.
No, mobile phones, paid for by the company. I remember that for our agents out in the field. They used to use landline phones belonging to the clients. OK. We also ordered lots of lighting equipment, but that can be expected. I'm not worried about that. 27 lamps and over 34 fluorescent lights.
And we needed 13 new mouses as well, to replace some of the old ones. All of the replacement computers had screens, very nice screens, but some of them lacked mouses.
Well, at least it wasn't 13 fans like the marketing department has just asked for. All right, so basically the amount of equipment ordered last year was quite considerable, but it was all necessary.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 2. Section 2. You will hear a representative from Dreamtime Tours giving information about a particular tour option. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 14.
Dreamtime Tours have just the tour for you. The one I have chosen to talk to you about today is what I consider our best tour. It will take you from coast to mountain and back again. You'll spend a memorable and very comfortable day traveling in air-conditioned luxury. You'll see from our brochure that we have 4 pickup stops along the coast, and about 20 minutes after we pick up our last passenger for the day, we'll be stopping off briefly at a magnificent housing development, marina, and shopping complex. You'll be able to admire some of the most expensive and lavish houses on the coast. And here we'll take a quick walk around the waterfront. Now, despite its name, Hope Island, we can reach it without getting our feet wet or taking a boat ride. Hope Island is connected to the mainland by bridges. From there, we head inland to the beautiful Tambourine Mountain. You'll have time to browse in the many specialty shops, or you can sit and relax at a friendly outdoor cafe. We board the bus again and pass through an old timber milling town on our way to O'Reilly's Green Mountains. Once there, you might wish to venture across the famous Treetop Walk, which is a bridge suspended in the canopy of a rainforest. Definitely not for the faint-hearted. If you're not up to the excitement of this walk, or perhaps after you've done it, why not enjoy lunch on the balcony of O'Reilly's restaurant? Before we leave, you'll have time for a stroll through the botanical gardens, Or perhaps you'd like to feed the beautiful parrots and other birds. We'll supply the birdseed. From O'Reilly's, we travel to an alpaca farm for a demonstration, and of course, there'll be a photo opportunity for you with these gorgeous animals before returning to the coach for the journey back to your original departure point.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 15 to 20.
If I've persuaded any of you to sign up for this tour, take a look at our Dreamtime Tours brochure. You'll see that you can book over the telephone, or you can make reservations through the reception desk. We generally have a member of staff manning the desk from 7:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day of the week. Don't hesitate to ask reception staff any questions that you might have about this tour or any other tour, and be sure to make it known if you have any special needs. We'll do our best to make your trip rewarding and worthwhile. If this is the tour you want, be sure to specify Green Mountain Tour, and note that these excursions are full-day tours on 3 days of the week only, Sunday, Monday, and Friday, although we're hoping to have a Saturday tour available by next year. You'll see that fares are extremely reasonable, with each adult paying just $37. Now, that's not bad for a trip of around 280 kilometers, is it? If you want to bring the family, obviously, the Family Pass is great value at $94. That includes 2 adults and 2 children. But if you're an older adult, over 65, in other words, a senior citizen, your fare is discounted too. You'll pay a bit less than the full adult rate. Please note the departure times. We adhere to these strictly. The coach will leave the southernmost point of Coolangatta at 10 to 8 sharp, travel through Burleigh, and on to Surfer's Paradise, which is our most popular pickup point, departing from there at 8:30 in the morning. At 8:45, we make our last pickup at Labrador. May I remind you to dress appropriately for the day? Ladies, no high heels, please. Comfortable walking shoes are what is required, and I always recommend that everyone takes a light jacket because the mountain air can be quite cool compared to the heat and humidity of the coastal regions. Oh, something else I should remind you of. The prices quoted in the brochure are just for coach travel, although we can arrange for a minibus to collect you from your accommodation and bring you to the departure point free of charge. If you want to avail yourself of this service, be sure to let the booking clerk know. You will need to bring along extra cash or a credit card to cover expenses such as optional side trips, food and drink, and, of course, entrance fees to the various attractions. Well, that's all I have time to tell you. If you have further inquiries, please use the phone number on the brochure.
That is the end of Section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 3. Section 3. You will hear 2 students, Sam and Liz, discussing a project for their marketing course. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 24.
Liz, I'm getting really worried about this marketing project we have to do together. Assessment is based on a single year-long project.
Oh, don't worry, Sam. All it takes is appropriate planning. I used to work in finance and we always divided the year into quarters. So let's just do a quarter-by-quarter year-long plan.
Well, I intend to firstly interview people. I mean, we need raw data for this project, right?
Okay, that's your job. So we just need to coordinate my contribution so that we don't double up at the beginning. I can carry out the research on all the theoretical issues and background, for example.
Well, why don't you do the summaries of the main texts as well? You know, write them up.
Oh, I think we know those texts well enough already, and it's only optional anyway, so let's not bother with it.
Okay.
Now, moving on to the second quarter of the year, I'll start collecting all the relevant information, the details, facts, and examples from my book reading, while you can do an analysis of the first-hand information you got from the interviews.
Okay, and then it's break time. I would say by then, mid-year, both you and I will have to decide on our point of view.
And how we'll support it in the essay, and based on that, we can work together on designing an appropriate structure for the final writing, when we present everything.
We'll need a bibliography, of course. I could do that in the third quarter, but since you did all the theoretical research, it would be a better job for you.
We can do that at the very end of the year, but I'll make the preliminary list as I begin writing the essay proper. Meanwhile, you can begin sorting out the numerical data into easily readable formats. That's what the other students will be doing. You know, grouping statistics in tabular form or making graphical representations.
And in the last quarter, we can proofread each other's work, allowing a different set of eyes to be involved. So I'll check your writing for any mistakes, typos, or logical problems. I'm sure the essay will certainly benefit from such a thorough proofread.
And I'll check all your tabulated statistics and graphs for the same issues.
And then we'll just put it all together. Well, now it sounds far less scary.
That's right. All you need is a clear, logical, and coherent plan.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 25 to 30.
As we discussed, Liz, my first task on this project is to get data using interviews, over 100 of them. To do that, I'll need to put a flyer on the university notice board to get volunteers.
Okay, just do that and we can start immediately.
But I tried this last year and almost no one replied. The whole project was a failure as a result.
You just need to ensure that the flyer is designed well. I did a course in design, so I can help you.
I'm all ears.
Well, one of the first rules, since the notice board will be full of papers, is to make sure your flyer stands out. Thus, don't use white paper, use coloured paper.
You mean like yellow paper?
Yellow, red, orange, it doesn't matter, as long as it's coloured and thus more obvious. Similarly, make the heading attract people, and money does this, right?
Oh, sure. Everyone wants money.
So don't say something boring such as help needed, but something such as easy money. That will immediately attract people's interest and also ensure they know that it won't take much time. These interviews are about half an hour, so tell them that right under the heading.
Sounds good. Keep going.
Well, by the same token, people don't have the time to read. They don't want to struggle through a large number of words. Thus, limit them. That will make the flyer easily and quickly read. Finally, there's a lot of false advertising and tricky people out there, so the readers might get suspicious, particularly when you're offering significant money for little work. You need to thus assure them that this is legitimate. So, at the very top of the page, make sure you indicate that the scheme has been approved by the course convener. Just some writing saying this, but you should also add a signature. It doesn't matter who signs it. People don't read it anyway, In fact, you could even sign it yourself.
Don't worry, I can get a legitimate signature.
But you should definitely include a stamp, which is more reassuring to the readers.
What sort of stamp?
The department stamp. Some people put the university stamp, but to be honest, anyone can acquire that from the student union. A stamp from your department shows much more authenticity, and that way everyone will feel that the scheme is legitimate and hopefully be willing to give you a ring.
So that's it? It's all finished?
That's it, apart from the contact details at the bottom of the page, of course.
Of course. Hey, that was some useful advice. I think a flyer like that will really draw them in. Thanks for that.
No problem.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 4. Section 4. You will hear a talk by a health studies lecturer on anxiety. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
My talk today is on anxiety. Anxiety is something you've all experienced at some time in your life, so you'll know that it's an emotional condition in which feelings of dread, fear, and mental agitation predominate. However, what we call an anxiety state or anxiety neurosis or phobic state, they all mean the same thing, is characterized by anxiety reactions far greater than those normally expected for the circumstances, and these reactions may be severe and prolonged. This is the most common form of neurosis in westernized countries. Usually, normal anxiety decreases with repeated exposure to the feared situation, whereas a neurotic anxiety tends to increase. Gradually, the person is inclined to avoid the feared situation and views it with increasing dread. Sometimes there may be an inherited tendency for this, but usually environmental issues are more important. The individual may have been a worrier throughout life, and a stressful condition, just before symptoms set in, is common. Often there is a gradual build-up of anxiety, possibly for weeks or months before the ultimate break occurs. The precipitating cause is usually one of great significance to the patient, often related to personal events, such as bereavement, a breakup, threats to career, health, or personal integrity. What are the symptoms of phobia? Well, phobic states often develop into severe, crippling challenges that can be very difficult to overcome. The person develops a fear of certain situations. It's not uncommon to have one or more of these present at the same time. I'm going to name some frequent phobias and give you a description of their symptoms. Let's start with agoraphobia, which is when the person has an intense anxiety about venturing outside the safety of the normal home surroundings. It may be impossible for this person to ever go out alone. Their fear of public or open spaces is completely irrational, and they often end up leading very secluded lives. Claustrophobia, on the other hand, is a morbid fear of closed-in areas or places. If you see me taking the stairs instead of the lift, think about it. Am I trying to get more exercise, or am I trying to avoid the confined interior of the lift? And I'm sure you all know people who are afraid of flying. Sometimes it's the fear of being enclosed in the aeroplane itself. and you can imagine how the cramped confines of airline toilets are really bad news for these sufferers. Now I'll move on to discuss social phobia, which, believe it or not, is more common in men. It's an acute anxiety that develops when they are in the presence of others. They feel self-conscious, apprehensive, and embarrassed. If attention, real or imagined, is focused on the sufferer, he becomes uneasy and may blush, stammer, or stutter. Some sufferers even develop tremors, shaking or trembling movements of a part or parts of the body. Or another very common sign of their extreme discomfort is that they perspire profusely on their palms, under their arms, or on their feet. That brings me to the last one that I want to mention today, and that is single phobia. And no, it's not a fear of lifelong bachelorhood. This one is actually precipitated by an acute aversion to dogs, cats, spiders. You may have heard of the term arachnophobia. Well, it applies specifically to spiders, but any single thing can basically cause a strong aversion. Snakes, frogs, mice, or rats, for instance. I can assure you the list is unlimited. You name it, and someone is sure to have a phobia about it. Some people are terrified of the dark, for example, and I'm not talking about young children here. You'd be surprised how many adults are afflicted in this way. Well, I see our time is up. Next week I'll go into some of the treatments and therapies for phobias that have been used over the ages, and some of the relatively new drugs that have recently come on the scene.
That is the end of Section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.